Yesterday was the first public hearing in the impeachment inquiry against Donald Trump, and already this is blowing up in Democrats' faces. The first story, impeachment witness urges Burisma probe, testifies to concern of Hunter Biden conflict. It seems like these two government individuals were concerned that Hunter Biden was working with this Ukrainian company, and they thought it looked bad, and they were upset that their concerns went unheard. They're actually now testifying to a reason why we should be investigating the Bidens. More importantly, we're learning that many of these people didn't know a whole lot about what Ukraine was doing in the 2016 election. And perhaps Donald Trump was right to have an investigation into the Bidens and into Burisma because people were concerned about corruption. But it turns out much of what their concern was really about a disagreement in policy. If you don't know about the story from Politico in which a Ukrainian officials were working with a DNC consultant, you'd probably be alarmed. Why is Trump calling for an investigation? But the point is, the president was elected to do a job. It is not your job to question his motives. But this is apparently what's happening. But it gets worse. Now, there seems to be real concern over Hunter Biden. We're learning this. But the Democrats got no new information. Yet, sure enough, we're seeing a bunch of left-leaning outlets talk about the bombshell report, the new testimony from Bill Taylor. Yes, claiming that Donald Trump was directly implicated after new information emerged about a phone call. Donald Trump is done for, a bombshell, a bombshell, a bombshell. We've heard it a million times. But it turns out that it was an individual testifying that they heard from a staffer that overheard on a phone call and asked for the opinion of an individual as per the opinion of the president. And somehow they're claiming this as evidence. Here's what I'm seeing. For one, all that's happened so far is we have actual grounds, in my opinion, to look into Hunter Biden. The Democrats haven't gotten anything from it, but the media is now whipping the left into a frenzy, making them believe there's evidence. But when this comes to nothing, when nothing happens, they're going to be shocked and dismayed, as that's what keeps happening. Russia, Russia, Russia for years. And now here we are again with the media pretending there's evidence when there isn't. And here I am, somebody who's not a particular fan of Trump, being forced to once again defend him because the media is full of it. Let's get started. I want to break down a couple things for you. How it's damaging for Democrats already, and there's several reasons, but more importantly, how the media keeps whipping the left in a frenzy, in my opinion, to generate clicks, to make them believe Trump actually did something. But sure enough, when it comes to the actual letter of the law, there is no evidence, and the media is claiming there is. So once again, the left are being led in the wrong direction, but they keep clicking, and they keep generating these clicks for these news companies who are looking for a bombshell because they need your money, they need your eyes, they need ad revenue, so everything must be a big bombshell. Let's start with the story from Fox News. Impeachment witness urges Burisma probe. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. There's a PayPal option, a crypto option, a physical address. But of course, the best thing you can do is share this video because I'm going to break down how the press is wrong and why this could lead, or should lead, but probably won't, to a Biden probe. Fox News reports, State Department official George Kent testified Wednesday that he would love to see Ukraine look into the circumstances surrounding the closure of a probe tied to natural gas firm Burisma Holdings, while also raising concerns that Hunter Biden's role on the board of that firm created the appearance of a conflict of interest. During questioning by GOP counsel Steve Castor at the first public hearing of the House impeachment inquiry, Kent was asked about the Ukrainian investigation into Burisma Holdings and why it was closed. See, here's the thing, for those that don't know. Biden came in, said, fire this prosecutor because he's not doing his job. They believe there was corruption. That's their story. But the new prosecutor who came in cleared this individual of all wrongdoing. So if the argument is that they needed a new prosecutor to look into corruption, why did they end up being okay with someone who cleared the guy of all wrongdoing? It doesn't seem to make sense. But what does make sense is that Hunter Biden, for seemingly no reason other than his name, got a job. And even Democrats and people even on the left have mentioned this. They've called it soft corruption. So why then was the investigation stopped after Joe Biden removed this prosecutor? The new prosecutor did not find any evidence. The guy's money was released. Something doesn't make sense. But let's read on. Kent testified that it was his and other officials' strong assumption that the founder of the firm, Mykola Zlochevsky, had stolen money and that a prosecutor had taken a bribe to close the case. Castor asked Kent whether he was in favor of the matter being fully investigated and prosecuted. I think since U.S. taxpayer dollars are wasted, I would love to see the Ukrainian Prosecutor General's office find who the corrupt prosecutor was that took the bribe and how much was paid. Kent, though, was not saying he wanted an investigation into Burisma over Hunter Biden's role, and testified that he did not witness any U.S. officials working to protect that firm from criticism or investigations. The Biden's family's action in Ukraine, along with a separate issue connected to 2016 election interference, were at the core of what Trump wanted investigated out of Kiev. Trump's now famous July phone call in which he pressured Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to launch the investigations, now pressure is a bit strong, I would say. He said, do me a favor. It's not much pressure. Prompted a whistleblower complaint, and in turn, the impeachment inquiry in the House. The president's request came after millions in U.S. military aid to Ukraine had been frozen, which Democrats and some witnesses have cited as a quid pro quo arrangement. Now let's stop. They say Trump wanted a public announcement and an investigation into the Bidens. Never happened. They say that in exchange, Trump was withholding this aid to pressure them, to extort them to do it. They never knew about it. So nothing really happened. I believe it was Jim Jordan who said, it's actually quite simple why Trump held up aid. For one, aid gets held up every so often. But more importantly, you had a new Ukrainian administration. And Trump said, let's withhold the money, or I'm assuming this is his assumption as to what Trump was thinking. Withhold the money. We'll see if they're on the level. We'll take some time to talk to them and figure out what they're all about. And if they are genuine, then we'll give them the aid. That actually makes a lot of sense because the argument about extortion makes no sense. Trump was extorting them without telling them. Well, Vindman, the colonel who testified, claims it's because there's an implied extortion because the power disparity between the U.S. and Ukraine. I'm sorry. That's not a legal issue. We can't legally determine what someone's frame of mind was when no demand was made of them, and Trump never told them they were withholding money. But now, in the impeachment inquiry, we actually see at least one of the witnesses saying, yeah, that was a conflict of interest, and we should probably look into it. They say in Ukraine, meanwhile, the Burisma investigation isn't entirely closed. Last month, Ukraine's Prosecutor General, Ruslan Ryaboshapka, said at a news conference that his office was instructed to review cases that had been closed to make sure they were fairly and thoroughly handled, including the probe into Burisma. That announcement did not mean that Ukraine was opening a new investigation into Burisma or the Bidens. But it does tell us enough with the investigation, with the circumstances around Joe Biden getting this prosecutor fired, and then the individual in question being cleared of all charges, with the questions from George Kent about what Ukraine was doing with this Burisma, it stands to reason Trump may have thought, they've got to investigate this corruption. None of this makes sense. So why then are these two individuals shocked that Donald Trump was taking this foreign policy action? And more importantly, why should they feel they have a right to supersede the president? Now I want to show you a simple breakdown. This is from the politics subreddit from something called Auto TLDR. Too long, didn't read. They say, quote, not only does President Zelensky deny the Democrats' characterization of the call, but as Ambassador Taylor testified to this committee, the Ukrainians did not even know at the time of the call that a temporary delay was put on the security assistance for them. Ambassador Taylor testified that President Trump was the first president to see that Ukraine was afforded Javelin anti-tank weapons. What's strange is some of the witnesses at these hearings and previous depositions who express alarm about these inquiries were remarkably uninformed about these indications of Ukrainian election meddling and why the president may have been concerned. This story was entered into the record on day one. Ukrainian efforts to sabotage Trump backfire. Kiev officials are scrambling to make amends with the president-elect after quietly working to boost Clinton. From Ken Vogel and David Stern. The story exists. It's real. It's from Politico. From this, you'd imagine a president would say, you know what? This needs to be investigated. Should Trump have called and said, do me a favor and do these things? No, I think it's inappropriate, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think Trump has made strategic errors, and I'm not a big fan of him in terms of a lot of the policies he's enacted. He's followed the Obama suit in terms of, commando raids and drone strikes. Yeah. But let's talk about what's going on domestically. Oh, I'm sorry, not domestically, but yes, technically. What I mean to say is the Democrats are, and many of these outlets are complaining that the Republicans were asking the wrong questions, weren't actually getting to the core of what Trump did, because the Democrats think all of this is predicated on a conspiracy theory. But let's say this story from Politico didn't exist, and most of these Democrats don't seem to know it exists. Well, then it sounds like Trump was saying, dig up dirt. But when you start from this point, that Ukraine did this, Politico reported it, everything seems to make sense. Why would Trump give military aid to a country that was interfering in our election and doing things that are unethical or even illegal? In which case he'd say, you got to look into this. But he didn't even offer up the quid pro quo in the phone call. They never knew the aid was being withheld. So all of this is predicated on absolutely nothing. The only thing we've gotten so far from the hearing is, one, this story is now entered into congressional record. I believe that's what happened. And George Kent testified, yeah, we probably should look into Ukraine. Now, here's the more important part. Breaking news from this morning. U.S. envoy Sondland did not link Biden probe to aid Ukraine minister. Who are we going to believe, man? The partisans in this country who have been chasing after ghosts nonstop for years to try and get Trump removed, or the numerous officials in Ukraine who said that's not what happened. Now you can argue all day and night that they're just trying to play to Trump because they have to, because Trump's in control. And I'm sorry, man, we cannot make assumptions about what their state of mind is. If they say it, they say it. That's all we can really do. But check this out. Even CNN recognizes Democrats have a big impeachment problem. When CNN comes out and says, you've got a problem with your testimony, I think it's fair to say this impeachment blew up in their faces. CNN analyst, it's a problem for Dems that impeachment witnesses never met Trump. Not only that, this analyst said they've never met Trump. They didn't talk to Trump. It's not firsthand. And then Jake Tapper says, ever. That's right. They've never talked to Trump. So now that brings me to the big bombshell report. They're saying new testimony has emerged. This proves it. And in my opinion, this is nothing but bad news for the Democrats. When you have an uninformed electorate, you may be happy they mindlessly follow behind you. But when they start believing crazy things and you can't control the crazy, you just lose. If the media, media companies need clicks, which means nothing really happened yesterday. Like, I think it's interesting that, the Hunter Biden stuff came out, but it's minor. It's like, yeah, we get it. Trump was already trying to investigate. Whether you trust the guy or not, it seems like there's a real reason to investigate. But the media can't be satisfied. They can't stop with just saying nothing really happened. No, they need to make sure that everything's sensational. Guess what? Brian Stelter, in a segment, says, later today, this is from this morning, later today, we'll have some early ratings for the first impeachment hearing. But TV ratings are only part of the picture. And I predict the audience for the hearings will grow over time. Here's why. I'm not saying you shouldn't discuss ratings, but we can see what the media's motivation is. They're going to tell you all of these crazy things because their intention, in my opinion, is to shock you into watching. In reality, it was like watching paint dry. And sure enough, Brian Stelter says, Republicans are going to tell you it's boring, it's nothing. Yeah, it was boring nothing. We learned nothing. Now let's get to the meat and potatoes here. The Democrats claiming new testimony. I'm gonna walk you through the gradual increase in pure insanity. First, Huffington Post doing a decent job in telling you what really happened. Bill Taylor says aide was told Trump cared more about Biden probe than Ukraine. The acting U.S. ambassador to Ukraine revealed the new information while testifying before House impeachment investigators. Okay, so this is a story, I think it warrants a couple paragraphs. That Bill Taylor was told by an aide that Sondland's opinion of Trump was that he cared more about the Biden probe. This headline's basically telling you what it is, but let's step it up a notch. Here's what Vox says. Bill Taylor dropped a bombshell in his impeachment hearing opening statement. He said a member of his staff gave an account of a previous unknown Trump phone call. Yeah, if you're on the left and you trust the media and you read that, you're like, whoa, what's happening? And it sounds like something big. It gets better. First of all, a previously unknown Trump phone call that isn't corroborated so far. I mean, Sondland might testify and say it happened, but the point is, just because someone testified that someone else told them that they heard someone they think was the president on a phone tell someone else and then gave them an opinion of what the president said, it's absurd. But check it out. It gets crazier. Talking Points memo. In impeachment surprise, Taylor unveils new evidence directly implicating Trump. That's just absolutely not true. Could you imagine going to court and saying, John told me that Bill was hanging out with Steve, and Steve said that Zach stole a candy bar? They're going to be like, what? So wait. We're playing a game of telephone here? It's not even implicating Trump. It's about the opinion of one person, someone is giving you their opinion on what they think Trump's opinion is. It's an opinion hearsay that's gone through 4 layers. And Trump is not involved. But it gets better. I'm sorry. Here's Politico. Democrats land damning new evidence in impeachment testimony. I saw this and I was like, whoa, what did I miss? Damning new evidence, you say? Key figures in the Ukraine saga appeared to help Democrats make the case that Trump abused his power in the presidency. What? Oh man, check out this first paragraph. Donald Trump called a U.S. diplomat and close GOP associate in July for an update on efforts to push Ukraine to investigate his Democratic adversaries. A witness in the House's impeachment inquiry revealed yesterday. Revealed? No, nothing was revealed. This is serious. This is what they wrote. None of this is true. It's just one person's hearsay about another person's opinion on what they think the president's opinion is. Now, at the very least, if we're going off just the phone call, then what we have so far is hearsay testimony. Oh, but of course, they got to cover their bases. Democrat Rep. Quigley, hearsay can be much better evidence than direct evidence. No, you know what, man? The Democrats are floundering. Let me throw it to Sticks Hexenhammer. You might not know who he is. He's a YouTuber personality, and he tweeted this out just before I started filming. I said, I got to throw this out. He's got it right. He said, a month ago, the main problem for the Democrats is that they had no recognizable platform. Their main problem now is that their platforms have been rejected soundly. And so they're scrambling into another fake scandal to cover themselves. That's right. See, Ocasio-Cortez gave an interview where she said, this is really about uniting the party. So Daily Wire with the, sorry guys, it's a clickbait headline. But she said impeachment is uniting the different factions in the Democrats. Is that what we're really doing? Check this out. At the very least, when it comes to this new damning evidence, what we have is hearsay. I'm sorry. Bring in the aide and have them testify. The other problem is, let's talk about a real cross-examination. Let's say someone tells you, my staff member was at a meeting, okay, and he told me he overheard a phone call with the president where the president asked about investigations into the Bidens. Then that aide testifies. I'd ask, are you 100% certain the person on that phone was the president? Is it possible it wasn't? Is it possible, so you weren't on the call. You don't know the full depth of the conversation. You overheard this one section. So it's possible that you misinterpreted what was happening. Even if Donald Trump asked about the investigations, I take you back to the start of the story. If it's true that Ukraine did this and it's in the record, okay, then why is it a bad thing that Trump said, we've got to look into corruption? We now have a real reason to believe there may be wrongdoing. And I'm not even including John Solomon's reporting. John Solomon is an investigative reporter who's presented testimony and documents. And let's put that aside. Let's just look at what's going on. Hunter Biden, that's strange. How did he get that job? That's weird. Former CIA director. That's weird too. Joe Biden gets a prosecutor fired, but the new prosecutor clears this Zlochevsky of all wrongdoing. I thought you said there was corruption, but the new guy clears him, and now your son is off the hook? That's strange. And if Trump wants to investigate that, okay, I don't care. Nobody gets special access. But the Democrats aren't starting with this. They're ignoring this and starting from the premise that Trump just wants dirt. And that's fake news, and there's no real story behind this. Let me show you a little graphic I drew up, channeling my best Glenn Beck. What we have here is Bill Taylor testifying that a staffer told him that Sondland thinks Trump cares more about the Biden investigation than Ukraine. But at no point was Trump involved in actually speaking to any of these people and saying definitively that he cared one way or another. Now, it's possible Sondland testifies and says, the president told me the investigations are more important. I defer you then back to the Politico story. If it's true that Ukraine is corrupt, it's true that Joe Biden got this prosecutor fired, and the new prosecutor didn't find corruption or didn't even investigate, we don't know what happened, then why would Donald Trump want to give aid to a country that is corrupt? It's the same exact argument that they're claiming Joe Biden had. Okay, then, we need to investigate. But here we are today with the media absolutely convinced. Look at what Cenk Uygur says of the Young Turks. He tweeted this. This is the Trumpification of media. When a witness gives damning testimony of clear criminal wrongdoing by the president, but media complains the testimony wasn't entertaining enough. Would it have been better if this sober-minded diplomat had threatened to pile drive someone? Here's what Cenk was referring to. Jonathan Larson of the Young Turks tweeted out an NBC story. The story says, they say, and yet Taylor and Kent failed or perhaps succeeded, given their nonpartisan roles in government and and the atypically serious posture struck by lawmakers of both parties by dropping no bombshells and largely repeating the testimony they gave congressional investigators at depositions previously held behind closed doors. NBC said, no bombshell. They're right. The Young Turks reporter then says, shows Vox's story, bombshell report. Then shows this from CNN, bombshell revelation. And then shows what appears to be Business Insider, bombshell impeachment. They're angry that NBC correctly said this is no bombshell. Cenk Uygur said that was, clear criminal wrongdoing by the president, damning testimony of clear criminal wrongdoing by the president. What's illegal about saying, how are the investigations going? What's definitive and clear about an ambassador hearing from an aide who heard from an ambassador the opinions of the president? But Cenk Uygur sees this and he's biased and he believes the fake news, and this is what he ends up believing about it. I'm sorry. Hearsay of hearsay of hearsay of someone, like, listen, if Trump came out and said, here's what I think and here's what I like, I'd be like, okay. If Sondland says Trump wants the investigations more than, he cares more about that than Ukraine. Okay, Sondland, that's your opinion. Did the president tell you that directly? Well, we'll hear what he has to say. Maybe it's true, maybe. But for the time being, here's what happens. Nothing comes of the hearing. It's watching paint dry, watching grass grow. It's boring. We do get a little tidbit in, maybe we should investigate Burisma. Everybody seems to think so now. Or I'm sorry, I mean, like, there's reason to believe there's wrongdoing. Not everybody wants to investigate. But the left, needing the rage bait, the proof that Trump has done wrong, is exaggerating to an extreme degree. Because I tell you this, when this goes to trial in our legal system, this is beyond inadmissible. I could be wrong. I'm not a lawyer. And impeachments can be different. But seriously, they're going to try and admit this into testimony. Let me go back to that point I was making earlier. Go to the police and say, my friend Steve told me that he overheard a phone call where John mentioned something about candy bars and what was going on with them. So I asked Bill what John wanted with the candy bars, and he says John stole candy bars. They're going to be like, I completely lost track of what you're trying to say. Completely. Now here's where it gets good. Something funny happened. So we have this post here. An impeachment surprise. Okay, so this is not the first one. I want to show you this from the r/politics subreddit. An impeachment surprise, Taylor unveils new evidence directly implicating Trump. It's got 28,836 upvotes, 92% upvoted. Okay, all of these people reading Reddit have just been fed an embellishment. And they're reading the headline, and they're seeing the story, and they're believing this is real evidence. But of course, in court, it's not evidence. It's evidence of nothing. It's hearsay of hearsay. It's literally nothing. It does nothing. Why then are they running that headline? They may be ideologically driven. They may be desperate to get any negative thing on Trump, or they probably just want the traffic. As Brian Stelter pointed out, hey, ratings, we're going to check the ratings, see what the ratings are doing. That's what media cares about. How are the ratings? Is impeachment making us that good loot? And all of these people upvote it, believing it's true. I don't think Sondland will be able to amend his testimony out of that one. Or Sondland will say, that never happened. I don't believe that ever happened. And maybe the staffer must be mistaken. Who's the staffer? So the staffer has to testify, and apparently they're going to. We'll see what the staffer says. Probably will say something similar. Then Sondland will say something. But now we're going to get to the heart of the game of telephone. And it may come back to the staffer, and he says, no, he misunderstood. It may go back to Sondland, and Sondland's going to be like, I can't recall that ever happening. That seems strange. Sondland might say, yep, that actually happened. But Sondland already gave testimony. So I have to imagine, even if it was true, Sondland can't amend his testimony out of that one. So he might say, oh, no, he was confused. I was talking about something else. Bill Taylor overheard from a staffer who heard from me, and I was just, giving my opinion. Nah, sorry. Here's where it gets funny, though. In this other story, it says Republicans barely questioned the witnesses. They went for delay tactics, half-truths, and utter BS. What ends up happening is what I showed you earlier. Remember when I mentioned the auto TLDR bot? It actually got downvoted because the people at Politics are so trapped in an echo chamber that when someone presents a quote from the story, and again, it's a quote from the Republicans, it's not indicative of what the story is trying to say. So maybe, I can see why they're like, this is a bad TLDR. But I think more importantly, as we all know, r/politics on Reddit has, I think, 5 million subscribers. but it effectively acts like the inversion of the Donald subreddit. Everything is from left-wing activists, they have real news, but it's a lot of like left-wing political websites that aren't giving you the truth. They're not telling you or breaking things down. And so when people see this, they downvote it. If you're not familiar with what that means, it means that they're saying it's bad. It doesn't contribute to the conversation, so they get rid of it. And that was what I read to you earlier, that some of these witnesses at hearings who express alarm about the inquiries were remarkably uninformed about Ukrainian election meddling, that President Zelensky of Ukraine denies the Democrats' characterization. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with absolutely nothing in the hands of Democrat except an uninformed base. Maybe that's a good thing. I think it's bad. Because when nothing comes of this, they will blame you. They'll for the most part blame Republicans, but look at the fracturing of the Democratic Party. It's in part because they feel like the Democrats can't get anything done, and they want new voices, new strategies, new laws, etc., new policies. So I don't think it's completely in this regard, but think about it. You have a bunch of Democrats who are convinced by the media that Trump did this. Direct evidence. Jen Kuger says clear testimony of clear wrongdoing, criminal activity. None of that is true. It's just hearsay, okay? You can't prove it. We'll get there if it's true. But for now, no. All these people believe it. They read the media. Trump will not be convicted on this. This is not evidence of anything, even if he did ask for the investigation. So they end up thinking the Democrats have failed them once again and couldn't get the job done. The Democrats don't seem to care. So it's all blowing up in their faces. And at the best, the only thing that really came out of it is that we learned that George Kent actually did think there may have been a conflict of interest, or at least the appearance of one, with Hunter Biden taking a job in which she didn't really offer anything. So in the end, nothing. Yeah, even CNN pointing it out. So I'll leave you with this. When CNN says, you've got a problem, these witnesses never even met Trump. Never met Trump! What are we doing? And you can tell what the media is after. They're after the ratings. The media will prop this up all day and night to whip the left into a frenzy. The Democrats just chase after them. And guess what? I do have one more thing for you. Here's proof. Story Bench from Northeastern University. They dug into different news stories to try and figure out if the news was following the Democrats or vice versa. And they came to a rather sad conclusion. First, they say, pundits often say the Republican Party is in disarray. But based on this analysis of media coverage of Democratic candidates in 2019, the average U.S. voter is unlikely to be clear yet what Democrats want this election to be about. The story goes on to say, unfortunately, though, our analysis underscores that the media hasn't broken away from the poll and controversy-driven coverage since March. Yes, quality news organizations such as the New York Times and the Washington Post have produced some excellent stories on policy, the candidates' leadership styles, and how those politicians have met challenges over the course of their careers. But those tend to be overshadowed by day-to-day horse race coverage, and even those news outlets aren't immune from following the pack over the cliff. That's the point. One outlet comes out and says, here's proof. The next outlet comes out, rewrites the same thing. They're all running off a cliff, and they're dragging the left and the Democrats behind them. Because in the end, these news outlets aren't writing stories like, hey, we did an investigation, here's what we found. They're waiting for some shock and outrage and then just affirming the biases of those who don't like the president. They end up believing a fictitious reality. And you can blame people like Jen Kuger, who says it's clear evidence, evidence of criminal wrongdoing. It's clear. It's not. Absolutely not. Nothing came of this. And it is going to blow up in the Democrats' face as the media drags them off a cliff. I will see you all in the next segment at youtube.com/TimCastNews starting at 6 p.m. Thanks for hanging out. I'll see you there.